Should you have any questions during this presentation, please send them through the Questions tab on the right side of your screen. Our speaker will address them at the end of this presentation. Prosoft is pleased to offer a new webinar showcasing logistics execution from SAP. Listed are webinars that we have already presented. If you would like to have a recorded copy, please send an email request and we will be more than happy to forward them to you accordingly. Please stay tuned for future invitations, and we certainly look forward to your continued participation. For those of you who are not familiar with Prosoft, Prosoft is a premium consulting company providing a wide variety of services in the SAP and enterprise integration platforms. This webinar is presented by Seema Venkat. Seema is a senior SAP architect for Prosoft. In this morning's agenda, we will be covering basics of transportation processing, transportation relevance, scheduling forward, backward, routes determination, basic functions and shipment process, and Incoterms. And now let me introduce Seema Venkat. Seema?
Hi everyone. Thank you, Victoria. So this is Seema. We just are going to cover a small portion of the entire transportation module. See, basically transportation has been a huge area wherein which what we are covering is on top of the iceberg. What people call it as a huge area covering up from exclusively from customer backwards to vendor. So that is where the entire logistics comes in, the logistics execution of the world matters. Today's topic in SAP, we are trying to understand how this logistics execution can be brought into transportation and what SAP gives you as a features and talks of this particular area. So you can see in this entire process of this slide, you can see the entire logistics process, how the products are materials, finished, semi-finished, and your intermediate materials can be transported across the spectrum of the supply chain, starting from the vendor down to your customer through your various channels. So basically, transportation planning as a part of the process of transportation involves a huge logistics execution portion, which covers sales orders, rate determination, carriers, the planning of the shipments, generation of deliverables, or the deliveries being diverted across, and specifically picking up what kind of transport you would like to make it through, be it air, land, or ship. In SAP's execution of this kind of system, if you look at the entire R3 of ECC environment today, there is a huge process to be involved and carried forward, wherein which logistics execution by itself is basically done through the shipping process, which is a part of our major portion of our sales and distribution gets covered in, wherein which how a sales order is generated, the messages are picked up by the sales team. Once the sales orders are finalized, at what kind of packing you want to pick it up, and what kind of load scheduling you want to do, and what kind of freight you are looking at. When we look at these kind of portions, the biggest challenge that comes out is from the sales order is how our deliverables are going to be picked up and transported across. So here comes the biggest challenge. When my deliverables are being picked up and transported out, how my deliverables are going to be affected in terms of cost estimation, shipment estimation, and the final settlement of this shipment costs. For example, many times what happens is when the shipments are created, what actually happens is emergency orders come in. Add-on transshipments needs to be picked up, intermediate deliveries to be made, and routes to be rerouted so that multiple customers needs to be handled. This changes the biggest monitoring process of our shipment transportation across various locations, various customer sites, and the cost estimations. So this is how SAP tries to look at it, this entire process of shipment to the customers. And when we handle it, you can see the transactions that are mentioned below in each of those set boxes. The most and important one that comes out is the third one checkbox, which is on here, which is create shipment cost documentation. This is where the vital part of the entire cost determination gets drastically changed over. And SAP, through the process of various versions, has come up with a huge transportation related enhancements here, which gives us the flexibility to monitor and add on and change last minute outbound deliverables or deliveries. This in turn helps us to ensure that the carriers can pick up the required shipments, and if required we can even split the sales orders into multiple carriers, and the transporter can easily deliver the goods. And down the line process, which is highlighted to you in green, handles the entire finance side of this process, wherein which the vital thing that comes up is once the deliverables are made by the carrier, how the carrier is going to be made, how the carrier is going to be paid by us, and the second is how the customer is acknowledging our shipments, with deviations, without deviations, how the money is coming in, and finally how much is to be paid to the transporter and how much is to be deducted from him also in case of mishap or mischief played by the transporters. All this can be handled inside this process of the finance. So when we look at entire logistics execution, as we talked in the first slide itself, we said it is vendor to customer. So basically it talks of both the SAP's modules of material management and sales and distribution, covering up both the inbound deliveries to the outbound deliveries, shipment, and handing over the final material to the customer as per his requirement. This is a huge process involving various systems and a lot of deviations in the industry, which needs to be covered up as a part of the process. So SAP gives you this kind of huge flexibility, wherein which you can see it's talking of inbound shipments and it's also talking of outbound shipments, taking into consideration with and without warehouse management and extended warehouse management. This is a huge part of our process. For example, we can also have many times our customers as our vendors and vendors as customers. In those cases, how the invoices are to be paid to the vendors and how the billing has to be taken care by the customers. That means the payments as receivables. SAP gives you this functionality in such a way that you can correlate both your incoming payments and outgoing invoices payments as accounts receivables, payables, even when customer and vendor are the same person. That is the beautiness of logistics execution. So as a part of transportation, the biggest challenge that we always face is once the sales orders are done, how to make scheduling, how to make changes to the scheduling, last minute changes, and also ensure that the right transporter is picked up, the right kind of vehicles are routed so that the costs are at minimal for both the customer and the vendor. That is where SAP's transportation module helps us to pick up various scheduling patterns depending upon the packaging, depending upon the load of the consignment, the size of the consignment, transportation routes, and we can take the delivery scheduling as a part of our process and take it into the transportation. SAP gives you this accounting process in such a way that it gives you the best possible routes, it gives you alternate routing, and it also helps you to ensure that your transportation schedules are maintained as per the requirements of the customers and ensure that all incidental time recordings, which is nothing but transit time, is covered. The best part of the routing. So we have covered what is transportation, we have covered what is scheduling, we are now looking at the routing. See, any consignment that goes to a customer will always be routed to multiple locations or multiple towns or multiple cities. When this happens, if you look at the bottom figure, you see very beautifully two locations identified with multiple intermediate locations that are to be picked up or material to be transferred. This is where the destination point and the departure point becomes very essential and the route becomes very essential. When we look at the route, you can have the both options. Either you go through the blue dot line or you take the red line, whichever is the preferred one. So the basic thing when we look at the routing is we always look at one essential part of a routing, whether I have multiple shipments to be delivered en route or it is single supplies going into the customer, and how many countries we have to cross through or how many provinces we have to cross through. So basically the route determination is biggest the part of our sales order. When the sales orders are finalized, then comes in the scheduling, then comes in the transportation part of the route determination. We have multiple options that are given always. Essentially route number 1, which will be a standard routing process of taking the material directly to the customer destinations, or you always adopt rerouting formula wherein which you go through multiple transshipment points wherein which the consignments are transferred from one vehicle to another vehicle or one container to another container based upon the local legal requirements. All these are the most important thing that are considered as a part of our transshipment to our various zones across the process of our deliverables to our customers. So we also look at is what kind of conditions that the customer is expecting and what we can encounter. The last of it is the customer asking the material to be shipped to his which location, whether it is to his distribution center or whether it is going to be customer's warehouse or it's going to be customer's shipping location, a hub most probably. All this determines the route and the route determination, the cost estimation for this route. So here is a standard way how SAP looks at the transportation process in the overview, wherein which we look at both the transportation cost and the shipment cost as a part of our determination. So we also look at is whether the entire consignment should be going in a piecemeal basis or as a single consignment. So this is where we always look at the shipment cost processing. Once the shipment is picked up, the processing and the planning is handled, wherein which they always look at is when the shipment processing and planning is done, they always look at the process of creation of the cost. How this shipment cost can be processed with cost effectiveness to ensure that we deliver it to the customer, including the shipment costs at an optimal pattern. So SAP shipment process, starting off from the sales order and the inbound shipments. If you see, this is the entire process. If you look at this entire process, you will be seeing one of the biggest challenges that we always look out is cross-delivery packing and creationing of handling units. Wherein which, if, for example, if I am picking up 45 barrels of oil, lubrication oil, now all these 45 barrels will be individual barrels or they will be packed into one crates. So that is where the creation of handling units and the delivery packaging becomes very essential, which would determine the kind of carrier that we are going to pick up and the kind of freight cost that is going to be involved in it. And SAP allows you in this particular part of the transportation, very flexible way it looks out is depending upon the size of the consignment, overall total gross weight of the consignment, the system gives you what kind of carrier you are supposed to be looking at. And the system does help you in one thing is what would be the cost if I am picking up a bigger carrier or a smaller carrier to change my delivery points. So the basic part of the transportation is for every customer looks at is the transportation cost is inclusive of the final product that is being delivered to him. So they always ask us is what is the transportation cost and what is the cost of your material, what are the tax components that are going to come in. This essentially gives them the bill of the landed cost of the final product that is being received by them. So as a part of the shipping cost processing, we give them the bifurcations, the points of the cost and the pricing policy that we go through as per the legal requirements. Every country has its own way of calculating the costs. So sometimes certain countries do add on additional taxes on the cost of transportations. All this SAP gives you the flexibility to pick up those into the shipment sales orders or the sales info records and ensure that they are recorded as a part of the permanent database in the system. So as and when you do pick up a particular delivery to this particular customer through this particular shipment mode, the info record automatically plops up what is the optional value that is currently running for this particular kind of shipment. And that provides us intervention of manual intervention, avoiding the standard process of SAP. This is one of the biggest advantages of SAP shipment cost info profiles, wherein which these profiles give you the added advantage of to the management of the company or the clients that manual handling or changing of the costing doesn't happen, giving us an optional of optimum value of our products and the cost estimations so that we don't have the customers scrimping on us. And the biggest thing that comes up is we have been talking of shipment cost and other things. Who is going to pay for it? Is the price of the shipment to be paid by the customer or by the vendor? So that is where the total settlement has to be looked at in. So that is always mentioned, and SAP gives you the functionality of whether the cost can be settled by the vendor or by the customer in their process of cost settlement process. So as a part of our entire process in creating of shipment and shipment costs and documentation and settlement, the biggest challenge every day in and day out we look out is how to calculate this shipment costs. If you look back at what we have been talking of from till now, is that we have been talking of sales orders, we have been talking of outbound deliveries, we have been talking of transportation, carriers, we have been talking of all our logistic related multiple delivery points and routing. But we never talked of the biggest thing that we always look forward is the costing for each and every process that we are going through. Practically, we have gone through 7 processes that are involved, from sales order to the deliveries being reaching the customer. Now, if you see the most important thing is what is cost involved in each of these processes, some of them being added up, some of them being eliminated out. When you look at that process, the most important thing the system gives you is what would be cost on the financial side and what would be the optimal costing. Each and every process, the system gives you a standard benefit, and this can be loaded onto your respective various other processes of SAP, which can give you the strategic analysis of all this costing related stuff. And the info cubes in the BIW SAP gives you that advantage of this costing factor. Now, to settle these costings, the SAP's either finance team can help you out, or the controlling team can give you what could be the optimum costing. As a part of our entire process, we have 2 things that we have to remember is who is going to receive the material, who is going to acknowledge the material, and whether the right quantity has been received by the customer, right quantity has been dispatched by the vendor, and the required material is done or not. This is a part of the entire process monitoring of the shipments by the team, that is the logistics execution team, which also ensures that the right shipments are pulled in with the right shipment bills, which is the biggest thing that the customer looks at. That's the part of the major portion of this small webinar, wherein which we are trying to squeeze in our big part of logistics execution into a small portion of about 20+ minutes for you. You are open for all your questions.
Thank you for that great presentation, Seema. At this time, we'll now open it up to Q&A. Our first question: how is the cost estimated in transportation?
See, basically the cost estimation is done on various factors. One of the most important thing that comes up into the cost estimation is the route, whether we are determining if you are crossing multiple countries. For example, if you look at a country like a Latin American or a European client who is asking us to ship a material all the way from Mexico down to Brazil, you have to cross the multiple countries. Whether you want to have it through 2 countries or 3 countries costs the money, right? So that is where we look at the routing. We look at if a shipment is being delivered, whether this shipment can be done through the direct delivery of minimum countries crossing, so that we reduce multiple costs. In SAP, what SAP gives you always is routing and alternate routing. And it also tells you, along with the routing, it also gives you the option of the carrier. For this particular kind of consignment, what kind of carrier you can pick up, whether you want to pick up this particular material through land, air, or sea. And it gives you the options. If you are picking up whichever is the option, the costing is automatically picked up from the info record.
Thank you, Seema. We do have one additional question. How to do routing and change routing after changes in sales order done?
See, basically sales order done means the sales orders are already completed and you have finalized your consignment that needs to be dispatched. Last minute customers do come up, emergency requirements creep in. that is where we have to look at is what all customers can be satisfied en route, what cannot be satisfied. The basic thing that comes up here is the cost. SAP gives you that flexibility wherein which you can pick up routing based upon multiple delivery points, wherein which a particular consignment picked up by a big huge container consists of 2 customers. Half of the consignment is dropped en route and an alternate carrier picks it up from that hub and transports it to the second customer. Whereas the first carrier en route finally delivers it to the first customer. In this way, what happens is up to the hub point or our distribution center point, we have a single carrier picking up multiple consignments. That is what is known as change in the sales orders just before the deliveries are being picked up. So SAP gives you that functionality wherein which your sales orders can be changed even after they are completed. And it also allows you to make outbound deliverables, that is outbound deliveries, and your picking up process changed at the last moment based upon your multiple delivery points coming in place and multiple customer needs, change in sales requirements from the various sales related agents, employees, and your customer last minute demands. Once we look at these kind of last minute changes, one of the biggest thing that always puzzles out the logistics team is the routing. SAP, having done through various versions, has come up with a very beautiful logistics routing process determination, which helps you out as what could be the optimum shipping cost if I change my route from this to alternate. That is where the actual costing of your shipment comes into place. So based on which we can look at picking up the consignments, going back and splitting the sales orders and coming back and picking up the outbound deliveries. That's how the flexibility has been creeping in with the current routing determination process inside the transportation module. That's it, the answer for this.
Thank you very much, Seema. This will conclude our webinar session today. I would like to remind everyone, if you would like to have a recorded copy of this presentation, please send an email request and we'd be more than happy to forward you that accordingly. Thank you for attending.